Chapter 201, Here Comes Wang Yihan. Zhang Han accompanied Meng Meng to Mount New Moon for the whole afternoon. The little princess had a good time. She was frolicking around the whole time with sweat never stopping on her forehead. Meng Meng, it's time to go back. Zhang Han checked the time. It was almost 5 o'clock, so he went to the livestock area to get 4 chickens, some potatoes, and some other ingredients as well. After that, he returned to Meng Meng with a smile. Oh, okay, then, big hi-hi, little hi-hi, and also Darjin and little Jin. Bye-bye. Meng Meng will come back and play with you next time. Meng Meng held out her small hand and waved. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Dai showed a reluctant look while waving its 2 big palms, but why did his eyes float to the livestock area? He must already be hungry. Little Hai stretched out his big tongue and jumped around in a frenzy as he followed behind Meng Meng. Dai and Little Hai sent Zhang Han and Meng Meng down the mountain and stood on the edge of the jungle, watching them as they got in the car and all the way up till the vehicle disappeared from view. For them, the happiest time was when the master and the little master came. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Dai's eyes gave a slight stare as he licked his lips, motioning Little Hai to go catch some food. Ow! Little Hai ran back with a whoosh. Ooh! Dai shouted at his back 2 times, expressing, "Why did you run so fast?" After calling twice, Dai also rushed to catch up, ready to enjoy their sumptuous dinner. For humans, eating meat every day would inevitably be a little greasy, but Dai and Little Hai did not think so. Since the number of livestock on the mountain increased, these 2 really let go when it came to eating. They enjoyed roast pigs one day and roast sheep the next. Dai was even forgetting the taste of the fruits he had eaten for so many years. After Zhang Han and Meng Meng returned to the restaurant, Zhao Feng stood up to meet them. He had been browsing through Liang Mengkai's WeChat moments for the whole afternoon. Boss, the 3 men simply asked about the situation. It seems like they wanted the treasure back. However, they failed this time, so they might send someone stronger next time. I called Instructor Liu before and he said the people who came should be the senior members of the Hong Kong Security Bureau. Zhao Feng clearly and concisely explained the situation. Okay. Zhang Han didn't care at all. He handed his bag to Zhao Feng and said, "There are 4 chickens in it. Go to the restaurant next door and have them cleaned up." Okay. There was a slight quiver at the corner of Zhao Feng's mouth as he took the bag and went out to the restaurant next door. Then he whispered, It seems there is no need to tell the master such small matters in the future. He doesn't care at all. He really doesn't care." At the restaurant, Zhang Han held Meng Meng and walked to the edge of the sofa. Then he put Meng Meng on it and said, "Meng Meng, stay here and play for a bit while Papa cooks dinner." "Sure. Meng Meng wants to watch cartoons. MMM." Zhang Han smiled and touched Meng Meng's little head, then walked to the edge of the tea table, picked up the remote control, and turned on the TV. The children's channel was playing the popular Boonie Bears, so Meng Meng watched it with relish. Zhang Han went to the kitchen, took out the steamer to steam the rice first, then picked up the potatoes, beans, eggplants, cucumbers, and other ingredients. 10 minutes later, Zhao Feng returned with 4 chickens that had been cleaned up quickly. Zhang Han took the 4 chickens, then grabbed a knife and cut them into pieces of moderate size. After carefully picking out all the chicken wings, using the 8 wings from the 4 chickens, he could make another classic dish, cola chicken wings. After cutting the chicken into pieces, Zhang Han took a large frying pan, put it on the stove, started the fire, poured a little oil in the pan, and put all the chicken pieces in it. The weight of the 4 chickens and the pot was about 40 kilograms, so the average person wouldn't be able to handle it. However, for Zhang Han, the pot was light. He was constantly stir-frying the food. Then he added some spices and water to stew the chicken pieces. When a lot of food was cooked at once, the meal was usually called a big pot dish. Relatively speaking, almost 90% of the big pot dishes were not as tasty as a small stir-fried dish. This was a question of the cook's ability. In truth, some big pot dishes were also very delicious. The 4 chickens put together were similar to a big pot dish, but each time they were cooked, they were the most delicious, not only because of the good ingredients but also because Zhang Han could easily handle the ingredients. It was close to 5:30 p.m. when he began stewing the chicken. Some individual guests began to arrive. In just 5 minutes, 3 of the white tables were full. The early bird catches the worm. This sentence was very reasonable. People all knew that if you came half an hour earlier, you could be one of the first to eat. If you came a little later, you would have to queue up in a long line. Another 10 minutes later, there were 7 or 8 people sitting in front of the restaurant, one of whom was Ling's, who had come at lunch. The lunch was really a wonderful experience for her. In Hong Kong, except for those famous high-end restaurants, Ling's had also experienced small restaurants and even some street snacks that were really tasty, but none of them could compare with what she experienced here. It was an indescribable feeling for her. When she threw herself into the dishes with all her heart, it felt like she traveled to a different place and the time just passed without her realizing it. When she left at noon, she planned to come back at night. She even arrived in advance, but she didn't expect to see a line forming so early. A few minutes later, the rarely seen Porsche Cayenne parked in the space in front of the door. Wang Jian's family was back. According to the normal schedule, they were supposed to visit Wang Yihan's grandfather for 3 days, but after the old man's birthday, Wang Yihan complained that the food was not delicious and said she had no appetite. She wanted to go back to Hong Kong to play with Meng and eat delicious food. At first, Suyu did not agree, but after Wang Yihan threw herself on the ground and cried, Suyu agreed while being a little angry and amused. They came back today and just arrived at Wang Qing's house. Before their ears could even touch the warm surface of a chair, Wang Yihan had already started to persuade them to come over, so they arrived a lot earlier than usual. Meng, I've come over to play with you. After getting out of the vehicle, Wang Yihan ran to the restaurant. As she ran, her fat face trembled and looked very lovely. After she entered the restaurant, Wang Yihan shouted, Meng, I'm here. Oh? Meng stood up from the sofa and she even forgot about the cartoon. She looked at the voice and, after seeing Wang Yihan, Meng's eyes shone. Hi, Yihan, you're back. I'm over here, come quickly. Hey, here I come. Wang Yihan grinned a few times. She quickly ran to the edge of the sofa. With her 2 short legs, she jumped up and sat beside Meng. She stared at Meng and grinned. Meng, I missed you. I missed you too. Meng's big shining eyes kept twinkling, showing her joy. I also missed the delicious food here. The food your daddy makes is very delicious. Wang Yihan said shyly, giving Zhang Han an admiring look. Seeing the adoration in her eyes, Meng was filled with pride. She giggled and said, my papa is the best. My papa is making chicken right now. It's super yummy. Great, I like meat. Hey. Wang Yihan was showing happiness in her smile. For kids, eating delicious food was happiness. Meng suddenly remembered something. She stood on the sofa, looked at Zhang Han, and said with a soft voice, Papa, I want to let Yihan eat some of that ham. After saying that, Meng looked at Wang Yihan and said, the ham made by my papa is very very tasty. After hearing that, Zhang Han chuckled and took out a red sausage, then cut it into 2 halves and walked towards them, 1 in each hand. Originally, Zhang Han wanted to give Meng and Wang Yihan 1 each, but Meng held out her 2 small palms and complained, oh, give them to me. Give them to me. So Zhang Han handed both pieces of red sausage to Meng. Meng held them in her hands. While looking at Wang Yihan's expectant eyes, she handed 1 to her and said generously, Yihan, I'll give you 1 so you can try it. Thank you, Meng. That's very kind of you. After Wang Yihan took it, her eyes lit up. Meng Meng was like a little angel to her. As she spoke, she leaned her head toward Meng Meng and wanted to kiss Meng Meng's little face. Meng Meng blinked her big eyes and it didn't seem like she was going to refuse. However, Zhang Han was a little stunned. He directly extended his palm, making Wang Yihan kiss the back of his hand. Aha! Wang Yihan froze and looked at Zhang Han with a bemused look. Zhang Han glanced at Wang Yihan and whispered with a smile. "It's okay if you like each other, but no kissing." Then Zhang Han looked at Meng Meng and said, "Meng Meng, have you forgotten what Papa said to you?" Wang Yihan was a little girl who wanted to kiss Meng Meng's face. Zhang Han hesitated for a moment, but after considering it, he felt that he still wanted to stop this kind of behavior. 3 or 4-year-old children kiss each other to express their love. It was only normal for them to kiss each other. However, Zhang Han thought this kind of preventive education should start from an early age. First, because he was afraid it would cause more trouble in the future. However, the second reason was that Zhang Han didn't like for others to kiss Meng Meng. So, in the end, Zhang Han blocked her with his hand. When Meng Meng heard those words, her eyes lit up and she began thinking. She tooted her mouth and said, "Well, didn't Papa say that? I can't let boys kiss me, but Yihan is a girl." After he heard Meng Meng's words, Zhang Han shook his head slightly. When Wang Yihan saw Zhang Han's stern look, she pouted and felt a little aggrieved. Fortunately, Meng Meng immediately said, "Well, Yihan is my good friend. Can I hug her?" "Sure." Zhang Han smiled. Yihan, let's hug." Meng Meng leaned towards Yihan very warmly and embraced her. Wang Yihan was satisfied and smiled again. "All right Meng Meng, you have fun with Yihan. Papa will make you some cola chicken wings later," Zhang Han said with a smile. Chapter 202, Cola Chicken Wings. Wow, cola chicken wings, I like those very much. Wang Yihan's eyes flashed brightly as she looked at Zhang Han excitedly. Zhang Han's mouth slightly quivered and he said, helplessly, "Then eat a little more later." At the same time, he whispered in his mind that he would have brought more chickens if he had known this little foodie was going to be here. 8 chicken wings, ahem, didn't seem like it would be enough. "Yihan, please try some ham." Meng Meng saw Wang Yihan had not started eating yet, so she urged her. The little guy liked to hear the praise of others after they tasted the food. Under Meng Meng's sparkling eyes, Wang Yihan quickly took a big bite. After that, the taste made Wang Yihan widen her big eyes. "Wow, it's so yummy." Wang Yihan praised it in a blurry voice. After hearing the praise, Meng Meng was very satisfied and her eyes turned into a smile. At that time, Wang Jian and several others entered, with his hands carrying 2 big bags of fruit, which were filled with some very high-grade fruit. Beside him, Suyu was also carrying 2 big bags, which were filled with all kinds of toys. "Hello, Mr. Zhang," Wang Jian revealed a warm smile and said, "Mr. Zhang's cooking is amazing, it's really amazing." After we returned home, the other restaurants and home-cooked dishes are a bit tasteless. The little girl couldn't wait to come back here after her grandpa's birthday. "Sorry to cause you so much trouble." "You're welcome to come here," Zhang Han replied with a chuckle. Zhao Feng, who was sitting on one side, got up and hurried over after seeing this. He took the fruit and toys and asked Meng Meng, "Meng Meng, do you want some fruit?" "Well." Meng Meng about it for a moment, then said in her soft voice, "All right, I will have a small orange, one of the small and sweet ones." "A sugar orange?" Zhao Feng looked inside the fruit bag a few times and found some small oranges. He opened the bag and took out some for the 2 little ones. "It's almost time for dinner, you two should eat less fruit," Zhang Han warned. Children normally ate less and they had already eaten a piece of red sausage. After eating some fruit, they would be almost full. "I know, I'll eat 2, just 1. Meng Meng pouted and said, "I don't want to eat fruit, I want more sausage, uncle." "I want another one," said Wang Yihan. She was making herself at home so she directly looked at Zhang Han as she spoke. This made Wang Juin's face show a trace of embarrassment. They only came by twice. How could his daughter already be asking for food from the host? Did she forget what I told her at home? So Wang Juin gave his daughter a dignified look and said, "Yihan, we'll have dinner in a minute. You can't eat any more for now." "Fine, then I will eat some fruit." Wang Yihan snorted discontentedly and rolled her eyes at her father, after which, she ate oranges with Meng Meng. It seemed to make sense that Wang Yihan was a fat little girl. She was really a little foodie. Seeing the two little guys twittering and playing, Zhang Han smiled and walked back to the kitchen. While Wang Juin was somewhat stunned, Wang Qing and Wu Liang had already sat down at the table. Wang Yihan was playing with Meng Meng on the sofa. There was nothing for them to do, and they didn't know whether they should sit down or go out to stand in line. Fortunately, Zhao Feng, who stood on the side, was more experienced. After seeing the embarrassment on their faces, Zhao Feng glanced at Zhang Han. He felt that for the parents of Meng Meng's good friend, there was no need to go out and line up like ordinary people. So, he smiled at them and said, "Sit down on the sofa for a while." Okay. Wang Juin breathed a sigh of relief, then smiled and answered as he pulled Su Yu's hand and sat on the side of the sofa next to Wang Yihan. As the president of a company, Wang Juin was naturally very smart. After only 2 visits to the restaurant, he could see that the restaurant owner didn't like to communicate with others. To be precise, he probably didn't like to talk nonsense with strangers. He was not enthusiastic and didn't look like the kind of person who was intimate with you at the first few meetings. This kind of person was not easy to get familiar with, but after you become friends with him, his attitude would change greatly. This was what Wang Juin saw in a short period of time. He wanted to get up and go to the kitchen to talk with Zhang Han for a while but felt it was a bit abrupt, so he decided to talk with the little princess and see how things unfolded from the side. "Ahem, Yihan, you've eaten 3 oranges, you can't eat any more." Wang Juin interrupted her appropriately, holding Wang Yihan's hand that was reaching for another orange. He glanced at Meng Meng and said with a smile, "Look at Meng Meng, she's so beautiful, just like a princess from a fairy tale. Yihan, you are a little fat now, you can't eat too much, you won't be beautiful if you get fat." "Huh?" Wang Yihan's eyes widened. She didn't like it when people said she was fat. Yihan she is not fat, she is pretty and cute, I like her," said Meng Meng, beaming with her big bright eyes. After being praised by her good friend's parents, the little fellow was very happy. I'm slim." Wang Yihan slapped Wang Juin on the leg. "Ha, alright, you are slim." Wang Juin smiled and touched his daughter's head. He looked at Meng Meng and said, "Meng Meng, your Mandarin is very standard, aren't you a native?" Meng Meng had always spoken standard Mandarin, which had been taught to her by Xian from an early age. For Cantonese, the little one could basically understand it, but only knew some Cantonese words that she often heard. However, Zhang Han, after that special Western restaurant, spoke fluent Cantonese. Meng Meng was slightly stunned. Then she tooted her mouth, held out her palm, pointed to her hair and eyes, and solemnly said, "I am Chinese, my hair is black, and my eyes are black too, so I am a native." "Then where were you born at?" Meng Meng Suya laughingly asked. Her voice was very gentle, making one feel like she came from a scholarly family. In fact, she was not. Her father was also a businessman. When she got married, she brought a dowry of 50 million yuan with her, providing a good starting point for Wang Juin. After hearing the question, Meng Meng's small lips became warped as she said, I was born in San Diego and just came back. A few days ago, I came to see my papa." "San Diego?" Wang Juin was a bit surprised. It seemed that Mr. Zhang and his family had a story. He knew San Diego very well and had been there twice. San Diego was a very beautiful city. It was located on the Pacific coast and was a city of California in North America. It was famous for its warm climate and rich beaches, although it was not as famous as New York and Washington in the world. It was popular with many rich people from North America and other countries. Ah, Meng was born in North America. Your English must be very good. Suyu's eyes lit up and she was more impressed with Meng. As a parent, she wanted her daughter to make some educated friends instead of some particularly naughty children. It's okay. Meng chuckled and said, Yihan, why don't you and Meng say a few words in English so that your good friend can evaluate your pronunciation? Suyu said and laughed. Sure. Wang Yihan also was not shy at all. She looked at Meng excitedly and said, hello. Hey. So the two little guys chatted in English. However, at the beginning of the greeting, Wang Yihan was able to cope with it, but, as they continued speaking, Yihan was stunned by Meng's immature but clear English. Enough. Oh, I can't. Hey. Wang Yihan glanced at Suyu childishly and then said to Meng, you are so good, you can speak English so well. He, you are also good. Meng answered happily. As they chatted, Wang Jian was busy thinking. From Meng's words, he imagined a series of images. Meng was born in San Diego and was less than 4 years old. That was nearly 5 years ago. She and her mother went back to Hong Kong to find Mr. Zhang. Did they split up? Did their relationship fall apart? Was it caused by a feud between the rich and powerful? It seemed that Mr. Zhang had an impressive background. He was not a simple person. After a burst of paranoia, he also couldn't figure it out. He just roughly felt and imagined some things. Wang Jian smiled and shook his head, throwing these thoughts out of his mind. He raised Zhang Han's status a lot in his heart. On the other side, Zhao Feng sat alone at the dining table. After he thought for a moment, he opened Liang Mengkai's WeChat and cleared his voice, then said with gentle voice, Ahem, Mengkai, when will you be arriving? The boss made 4 chickens for dinner tonight. We'll have a feast. After he sent the message, Zhao Feng stared at the mobile phone screen and waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. 5 minutes later, Liang Mengkai replied with a voice message. There is meat, we are on our way, we will be there in about 10 minutes. Okay, then I'll wait for you. Mengkai, your voice is very sweet, Zhao Feng smiled and said. There was no trouble at the moment, so Zhao Feng's body and mind were completely relaxed. He was not a cold person at all, and he had been considering when to pursue Liang Mengkai. What, do you mean my usual voice is not sweet? After hearing this sentence, Zhao Feng's expression turned stiff. He quickly replied, No, your voice is sweet at ordinary times. I like to listen. Who cares? This time Liang Mengkai replied with a text, and there was an emoji of disdain at the end. Zhao Feng smiled and shook his head. He felt that his spring was coming, but it was unclear whether he was Liang Mengkai's type or not. While Zhang Han was preparing dinner, at the headquarters of Tang Zan's company in the southern district of Hong Kong, Lao Biao, Meng Wu, and 2 other people with some status were standing in the conference room. They had already taken over half of the fixed assets of Tang Zan. Tonight, Lao Biao looked at hundreds of people in the audience and said with a loud voice, The whole southern district is ours. Everyone present here is also an elder who fought with us. I will guarantee your prosperity in the future, money, status, beautiful women, not one of these shall be missing. Good. Perfect. The audience cheered in succession. This feeling was like being at a party. Chapter 203, Hate themselves for not having a baby. Someone will assign you tasks later. Lao Biao said loudly. Guangqi of Lunan Road, Xuyong of Shandong Road and Jivanhang District are our current targets. Next is Guchen of Liu District. After defeating him, we'll have reached our final stop, New Moon Bay. At this point, Meng Wu, who was standing on the side, laughed and said, Everyone will be busy tonight. Perhaps the hands of the people who haven't fought for a long time are about to get rusty, right? Everybody can enjoy a feast later. But no one is allowed to drink wine. Don't blame me for being rude if I find a person who dares to drink. Of course. The bald man next to Meng Wu clapped his hands and said, "We shouldn't drink tonight, because we will drink at the celebration dinner tomorrow morning." While he was speaking, a man ran into from the side entrance in a hurry and came to these people, saying with short breaths, "Eldest brother, I've got news that Qiang Qi obtained a batch of weapons and his men are waiting in his mansion. I'm afraid that he wants to compete with us. D, according to his concubine, seems to be ready to run away, while Xuyong has taken a large number of people to find Guchen. If the two of them enter into an alliance with each other, they'll be much stronger." "Oh?" Lao Biao gave out a meaningful smile and said, "Even if the King of Hell comes today, he won't be able to change reality. They will all be rooted out." Although they were going to root these people out, they did not intend to create as much trouble as the events related to Tang Zan's mansion, for they would not back off completely. Their main purpose was to unite the territory while subduing the other rebel leaders and wounding their key members. As long as the incident was not very serious, it would be easy to cover up. Moreover, Lao Biao also left room to maneuver, which bore comparison with all the forces in the southern district. Not to mention the current preparations for war here. On the other side, in Zhang Han's restaurant, Zhang Han had already started making cola chicken wings. Cola chicken wings was a delicacy made with chicken wings and coke as its main ingredients, along with cooking wine, shallots, ginger, soy sauce, salt, and chicken broth as seasonings. Cola chicken wings featured a fresh flavor, bright color, tender and smooth texture, and a moderately salty yet sweet taste. Some of the diners said that cola chicken wings made from Pepsi would be sweeter, while the ones made from Coca-Cola would be moderately sweet. Zhang Han blanched the chicken wings with water for 2 minutes to remove the impurities. He poured off the water, added some oil, then put the chicken wings in the pot. After frying them for 1 minute, he poured a tin of cola, added some ginger slices, some shallots with some dark soy sauce, and soy sauce, into the boiling water. Then he reduced the heat to simmer. Although the chicken wings were made from local chickens, they were relatively easy to cook. After boiling for 10 minutes or so, the soup became thicker. At this moment, he opened the lid and added a little heaven fragrance powder. After stir-frying a few times, the delicious dish cola chicken wings had finished cooking. Cola chicken wings was the last dish cooked by Zhang Han. He had already finished cooking the braised eggplant and cucumber with garlic sauce. After the meal was ready, Zhao Feng prepared a large portion of each cuisine and brought them to the round table. The moment Liang Mengkai saw it, she was under the illusion that Zhao Feng was a real waiter here. Anyway, it was good for him to leave the chaotic underground force. When they were about to eat, Wang Jian and Suyu were a little embarrassed again. Since the host said nothing, they were too embarrassed to take the initiative to eat. Besides, there was a rule in the restaurant that only one person could use one membership card. So, if they wanted to enjoy the dishes, they would have to line up outside. These two adults, one of whom was the son of the former minister, a veritable offspring of China's elite, while the other was a rich man's daughter, who was basically a rich second generation. However, they were very restless and uneasy at this time in this restaurant that was only a little more than 100 square meters. If they told their friends, most of their friends would probably be shocked. But, thanks to Wang Yihan, the chubby little girl, who already got acquainted with Meng, they actually gained some advantages. Upon realizing that the dinner was ready, Meng climbed down from the sofa. When she saw that Wang Jian and Suyu had not moved, she was surprised and then looked at Zhang Han and asked in a childish tone, "Papa, well, can Yihan's papa and mama have dinner with us?" "Of course." Seeing Meng's big shining eyes, Zhang Han directly nodded, giving his consent. After he finished speaking, she looked at Wang Jian and said with a smile, "Come over and eat together with us." Oh, okay, thank you." Wang Jian felt vaguely flattered at this point and quickly stood up to thank him. Although he only came here twice, Wang Jian was also influenced subliminally and realized during this short period of time that it was high profile to eat at that round table. In fact, he felt more excited at this moment than when he had been received by the big boss in a Michelin star restaurant last time. Moreover, the envious gazes of those non-members reminded him that eating at the round table was a great honor. More importantly, they could enjoy the delicious food cooked by the boss. Even though they did not have membership cards, they had access to the delicacies on account of their daughter, who had good relations with the little princess of the restaurant. They only hated themselves for not having children. What was more interesting was that the couple, who were eating at the outermost table, looked at each other. They had not wanted to have children, but now they had a desire to have children. They could not afford the membership cards, but they could afford the expense of giving birth to a child. It, however, was only a thought. Although it was easy to give birth to kids, they would be raised in rich or poor environment. Since they were preparing to raise their baby in a rich environment, they planned to struggle for 2 more years to save some money. As Wang Jian sat at the dining table, preparing to eat, he hesitated, then looked at Zhang Han and said, "Do you like drinking, Mr. Zhang?" "Yeah?" Zhang Han nodded. Zhang Han used to like to drink red wine, and he had often sampled Remy Martin or Lafite wherever he went. But during the 5 years when he was at the lowest moment of his life, Zhang Han liked Chinese spirits rather than red wine, because it was more intoxicating. Later, after he entered the cultivation world and tasted nectar, he realized that it was real wine. "I also like drinking, but I'm a moderate drinker." Wang Jian picked up a piece of chicken and said with a smile, "I have 2 bottles of collector's edition Lafite, which was produced in 1982, I'll bring them here and have a drink with Mr. Zhang next time." Zhang Han agreed with a grunt and said casually, "I have some beer here, would you like some?" "Okay, let's have a drink." Wang Jian's eyes lit up. Generally speaking, people would not engage in an energetic conversation if they ate in a formal manner. However, after drinking wine, people were likely to talk more freely, which was the principle for opening up at the table. It was as if businessmen needed to talk about their feelings at the table first if they wanted to handle affairs or seek cooperation. Once they had a very interesting chat, the rest of the business would go smoothly. A news station once said that a person without academic qualifications would still be valued by the senior management of the company if he had a great capacity for liquor, which would directly raise his status. He just played the role of toasting and fending off wine at the wine table. Again, although wine was good, everyone should drink moderately, because drinking too much was bad for their health. Zhang Han went to the refrigerator in the kitchen and took out 4 cans of beer. After seeing his movement, Zhao Feng could not help looking at Liang Mengkai. Then he asked, "Mengkai, would you like some beer?" "No, thanks." Liang Mengkai shook her head. "She doesn't want to drink, but I would like to." "Zhao Feng, please ask the boss if we can also drink some wine," Yu Qingqing said while eating the meat. "Okay." Zhao Feng nodded, got up and quickly walked over to Zhang Han, then asked, "Boss, can we have some wine?" Zhao Feng smiled and took out 2 cans of beer from the refrigerator. After Zhang Han returned to the dining table, Wang Jian picked his tableware up directly, glanced at Su Yi with a smile, and said, "I'll go have a drink with Mr. Zhang." "Go ahead, you greedy pig." Su Yan gave him an angry stare. Wang Jian walked over to the chair on Zhang Han's right, took the beer after sitting down, then quickly opened one and handed it to Zhang Han to show respect, after which, he opened another one for himself, clinked glasses with Zhang Han, and said, "Mr. Zhang, thank you for your hospitality." His words amused Zhang Han. The dinner was originally prepared for Meng, so why would he entertain them? But he just let himself satisfied. Zhang Han chuckled and took a swallow with him. The dishes made by Mr. Zhang are really beyond description. They definitely taste great. Wang Jian gave a thumbs up sign while speaking, then said with a smile, "I've tasted the dishes cooked by Wang Long several times. At that time, I thought it was already the peak of cooking, but now I find that there's always someone who is better. My papa is the best. Meng Meng eventually finished eating a chicken wing and took time to speak. She was proud every time someone praised her papa. Meng Meng, eat quickly, the chicken wings are so delicious. Wang Yihan intimately picked up a chicken wing and handed it to Meng Meng. The moment he saw it, Wang Jian could not help laughing. The dinner ended with a happy atmosphere. After dinner, Zhao Feng cleaned up the restaurant and prepared to leave. Today he had rented an apartment, which was in a high-rise building in the neighborhood not far from the restaurant, so it was very convenient for him to make the round trip. As for Wang Yihan, she stayed in the restaurant with Meng Meng until nearly 10 o'clock. After realizing that her in-laws were a little sleepy, Suya looked at Wang Yihan helplessly and said, "Yihan, we're going home. How about visiting Meng Meng next time?" "No." Wang Yihan replied, without turning around. Wang Jian's expression slightly stiffened. "Yihan, your grandparents are sleepy. Let's stop playing today, okay? Otherwise, your grandparents won't bring you next time." Wang Jian smiled and said, without a trace of doubt in his eyes, I haven't enjoyed myself, distasteful daddy." Wang Yihan's arms were clasped together, looking very angry. Meng Meng pouted nearby and was afraid that they would not bring Wang Yihan here, so she thought for a while, then said with much reluctance, "Well, Yihan, you should go ahead, or you won't be able to come next time." "No, if they don't bring me here, I'll come by myself," Wang Yihan said unequivocally. Seeing her lovely movement, Wang Jian wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. He, however, still lowered his voice and said with majesty as a father, "Wang Yihan, are you being disobedient?" As soon as he became serious, Wang Yihan had a clever idea. She compressed her mouth, wrinkled her face and was going to cry. Chapter 204, The action starts blustery. Suya coaxed her in a hurry, trying every possible way. After over 10 minutes, she persuaded Wang Yihan into waving goodbye to Meng Meng with reluctance. "Meng Meng, I have to leave now. I'll come to see you next time." Next time I'll take you to play with Big Hi Hi and Little Hi Hi. My papa built a paradise for me," Meng Meng said with a chuckle. "Really? Then I will come early tomorrow." Wang Yihan's eyes brightened. After she finished speaking, Wang Jian, who was shaking his head with a smile, picked her up and left. He had a full schedule tomorrow, so how would he have time to bring her here to play? After they left, Meng Meng also felt tired. She stood on the sofa and stretched out her small arms towards Zhang Han. "Papa, I want to sleep. Here I come." Zhang Han smiled and reached out his arms to hold Meng Meng, then went upstairs to the bedroom. After he changed Meng Meng into a comfortable nightgown, the little princess crawled into bed and muttered, "Come on, Papa, tell Meng Meng a story." Zhang Han took off his clothes, only wearing a pair of boxer shorts, and went to bed, while Meng Meng moved and thrust herself into Zhang Han's arms. She had not realized how comfortable it was to nestle her head in father's strong arm until she met her papa. It was much better than sleeping in a small bed by herself. Where did I stop last time? I see, I spoke of the Dwarf King. The story says that the Dwarf King was very fond of gold, silver, and jewelry. He once. Zhang Han began to tell stories that Meng Meng had not heard before. After listening for a few minutes, the little princess fell asleep, pouting. Seeing her sleeping posture, Zhang Han lowered his head, kissed Meng Meng's little face gently, then he laid down and closed his eyes. If an adult tossed and turned or kicked with their legs while sleeping, then it was not a good idea for a child to sleep in the same bed. Zhang Han, however, did not have this habit because he could maintain the same posture until dawn. When he was cultivating previously, there were times where he didn't move for several years. Hong Kong at night was ablaze with lights that gave it a distinctive charm. Hong Kong covered an area of 1,000 square kilometers and had a population of more than 7 million. Its population density was among the top 3 in the world. Due to the fast pace of life in this city, ordinary people lived under great pressure. After a day's work, they were exhausted both physically and mentally. Only at night did they get some time for recreation. The city was still very bustling at 11 o'clock in the evening. But at this time, in the southern district of the South Island, a series of events were occurring. At this moment, there were dozens of people standing in Wang Qi's residence, which was located in the villain area of the Lunan Road. They were all ready for a big battle tonight. Wang Qi was a malicious person who completely turned up his nose at Lao Biao and his associates. He expected them to gang up on him, so he wanted to force them to fight with him directly. So, he was ready for battle. As long as they dared to come, he dared to fight. It depended on whether they dared to try and cause trouble. Did they dare? Wang Qi was highly disdainful towards them. The troublesome situation with Tang Zan had not ended and there were still repercussions. He believed that even if he gave Lao Biao and his men more courage, they still wouldn't dare to cause a scene as grand as the situation that occurred at Tang Zan's mansion. So, after waiting for a few hours without them taking action, Wang Qi believed Lao Biao had already given up. But, something changed at 11 o'clock. In front of the door, a few sirens suddenly rang out. This scared everyone because they all knew that there was a lot of contraband in this villa. Under the gazes of everyone in the courtyard, a dozen or so people got out of several police cars and stormed in with vigorous strides. They were led by a thin, grim-faced man. However, it was their powerful aura that slightly frightened the people inside. After all, mice were naturally afraid of cats. But a few people were not scared and just frowned at these people. "What are you doing? Are you rioting?" The grim-faced man who took the lead asked loudly. "What do you mean by rioting?" A man in his 30s moved out of the crowd and stepped forward, then sneered and said, "We're having a party here. What's wrong with that? It's none of your business anyway." "Well, you'd better just have a party. Get out of my way." "Why should we get out?" The man stared at him and said, "What do you want to do? My eldest brother is currently in a meeting and doesn't have time." As soon as this remark was made, a cold glint flashed in the grim-faced man's eyes. He immediately took out a dark gun from the lower back of his waist with his right hand and pointed it at the man's forehead without saying anything. "Do you dare to shoot?" The man appeared to be tough outwardly, but he was somewhat timid inwardly. But the next moment, bang! The grim-faced man shot him directly in the head, then coldly said, "Don't waste my time with your nonsense." After he finished speaking, he continued moving forward to go inside. Everyone took 2 steps back and made a path for the officer since he dared to pull the trigger. After opening the door and entering the hall, he found a group of 7 or 8 people, with Wang Qi smoking a cigarette on the sofa. When he saw the police officers enter, he arched his eyebrows. "Ha ha." Wang Qi sneered, then stood up, took a few steps forward, and said, "What are you doing here? Who gave you permission to come here? You're trespassing on private property. Do you have a search warrant?" "Oh." The grim-faced man grinned and raised his right hand. Bang, bang. 2 shots were fired on Wang Qi's leg. He sneered and said, "Sorry, this is the search warrant." After he finished speaking, he glanced at the group of people with coldness and shouted, "Take these suspects away." As the words fell, others came forward in succession to march them out of the house under the watchful eyes of the public. After getting in the police car, Wang Qi, who was suffering from agonizing pain, was astonished when he saw these people taking off their uniforms. His heart completely sank and turned cold after he saw them change the cars, carrying them into gold-cup cars after they drove for a period of time. "You are not policemen, aren't you afraid of being discovered?" Wang Qi quavered. He had not expected that Lao Biao dared to perpetrate such a horrible crime. Judging from the level of the current monitoring facilities, they would be discovered within a few minutes. The grim-faced man, however, sneered and replied with a hint of disdain, "Of course we're afraid, but the monitoring facilities on this section of the road seem to be broken." Hearing his words, Xuanqi went deathly pale. On the other side, in the Anxing district, he disguised himself and left secretly from the back door of the neighborhood. He got into an inconspicuous black Volkswagen which had been prepared and hastily drove it to Hong Kong International Airport. However, on arriving in the suburb, a drone suddenly overtook him from behind. More than a dozen sports cars intercepted I's car. Come with us. A long-faced man got out of the car and sneered. I's face changed greatly as he asked, "Aren't you one of Yi Han's men?" The two subordinates of Tang Zan who once held power were both captured with ease. Their last target was Guchen's area. At 1 o'clock in the morning, fights took place in many bars under Guchen's supervision. Although there were no deaths, the bars had been destroyed indiscriminately and many of Guchen's subordinates had been sent to the hospital. Compared with the other two targets, he was a hard nut to crack, which made him their prime target. The battle lasted for 2 hours, which reduced Guchen's safe area. Even though he joined together with Zuyong, he was being completely squashed. "Brother Chen, what should we do now? I just received news that Lao Biao and his associates have brought a large number of people here," Zuyong said apprehensively while standing in Guchen's residence. Joining Guchen was his only hope, so he was willing to become his subordinate. However, he never expected that even Guchen would fail to stop Lao Biao and his men. Guchen sighed deeply and said helplessly, "It's no use crying over spilled milk, we only have one option left." "What?" Zuyong said doubtfully. "Let's go to New Moon Bay." Guchen said in a low voice, "If we join Ahu and his group then we may still have a chance. There's no other choice," Zuyong said, then sighed. They left immediately and took their men to New Moon Bay to meet Ahu and the others at the Fengming nightclub. Ahu and his men were still up because they knew tonight was going to be of great significance. Once Guchen failed to stop them, their next target would be Ahu and his companions in New Moon Bay. However, after gathering together, there were hundreds of people in the lobby on the first floor of the Fengming nightclub, which reassured many people. Time passed slowly and it was already 5 o'clock in the morning. More than 20 Gold Cup cars drove up to the door just before dawn. They were here. All the people in the hall were shocked. Under their gazes, Lao Biao, Meng Wu, and 5 other people got out of the cars and entered as if no one else was there. What were they going to do? People were a little astonished. Perhaps they thought that these few men could win against the nearly 100 people in the hall. However, Lao Biao and his associates showed no signs of being afraid. After they entered the hall, everyone made way for them, allowing these 7 people to have unimpeded access to Guchen and his companions. "Guchen, is this your last line of defense? I thought you still had one last move, but you've let me down," Lao Biao said with a sneer. "Let you down?" Guchen laughed scornfully and said, "Why don't you fight with us directly?" "No, no, no." Meng Wu shook his head repeatedly and said, "We're not stupid. Everyone will suffer if we start fighting with hundreds of people. So, I'll give you 2 choices. The first choice is to surrender. If you surrender, skip it and tell me the next choice." Guchen interrupted him while wrinkling his brows. The first choice was definitely not an option. Since they were rival groups, surrendering just meant giving up their only chance to fight back. At this time, Lao Biao clapped his hands and laughed, then said, "Then I'll tell you the second choice, a 10-people fight. It's 5 o'clock now, so I'll give you 2 hours. We'll have a 10-people fight on Mount Wannan at 7 o'clock. If you win, I won't set a foot into New Moon Bay. If you lose, you have to get out of here. Okay?" Guchen's pupil shrank, then he said, "We'll arrive on time, at 7 o'clock. "Ha ha, great, I'll wait for you. I hope you can show me something impressive. Don't bring out some weak people." Lao Biao laughed with disdain and turned to take the lead as he left. After they left, Ahu, Zuyong, and the other 5 people had dirty looks on their faces. One of them said, "Brother Chen, we don't have enough fighters." Chapter 205, Ask Elder Brother Feng to come. A 10-people fight was a battle between two groups of people who wanted to fight against their respective opponents. Each group sent 10 men to join in a free-for-all battle. In general, the two rival parties were both overwhelmed with great strength. They knew that once so many people started fighting and caused a major event, it would be hard for them to put a stop to it. Therefore, 3-people fights, 5-people fights, and 10-people fights gradually appeared. Among them, 10-people fights had the greatest degree of difficulty. Firstly, it was difficult to find 10 very powerful experts. Secondly, although they did not use any weapons during the battle, accidents would always occur, and their lives could not be guaranteed at all. Since Lao Biao and his associates dared to have a 10-people fight, they must have prepared 10 masters and have buckets of confidence. However, it was impossible for Guchen to find enough skilled masters. "We can't give up, count me in," Guchen said in a low voice. It had already been decided, so all they could do was fight. At this point, Guchen knew that he had to step forward. "Count me in, too," Ahu said while frowning. "Count me in." Xuanhuan took a deep breath. Several awesome people all stepped forward in just a few minutes, a total of 6 people, but they were still 4 people short. "We're 4 people short, what should we do?" Xuanhuan said, secretly gritting his teeth. After hearing his words, Guchen slightly frowned. After thinking for a while, he stepped towards one of his men. "Lang, can you join us?" Guchen asked. Lang was 1.85 meters tall and weighed nearly 200 kilograms. He had good physical quality and was good at fighting. Guchen had not wanted to ask him directly and make things difficult for him, but he did not have a choice. Lang looked uncertain and his body trembled slightly with a mixture of feelings as he bitterly said, "I'm sorry, elder brother Chen, I really can't join in the 10-people fight. My girlfriend just accepted my proposal. If I'm involved in this battle, even if I don't die I will probably end up injured. I definitely can't do that. I'm sorry, elder brother Chen." Lang bowed his head while speaking. He was so ashamed that his eyes reddened. But at this time, everyone understood him. These kinds of fights were not easy at all. "It's okay, it's okay." Guchen smiled gently, then patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "You're going to have a wife soon, that's great. Perhaps I can attend your wedding, don't feel guilty." After that, Guchen's eyes traveled over the nearly 100 people there, but they all bowed their heads and did not dare to look at him. Guchen sighed inwardly, with a vague feeling that they had already lost. "Count me in." A loud voice sounded out all of a sudden. From the back of the crowd, a man came forward. He was 1.7 meters tall and weighed 120 kilograms. He was so anxious that traces of cold sweat could still be seen on his forehead. Obviously, a desperate struggle had gone on within him. "Elder brother Chen, you saved my life. Count me in for this fight." The man was patting his chest while talking. "You?" Guchen shook his head helplessly and said, "Forget it, you're not suited for these kinds of battles, just go back." He could knock down the man in front of him with one blow, so it was meaningless for him to join. "Elder brother Chen, believe me, I can do it," the man said loudly. "All right, you should go back, don't be impulsive." Xuanhuan came over and reprimanded him with a slightly relaxed look on his face. He looked at Guchen and said, "Elder brother Chen, I just remembered that I'm acquainted with 3 brilliant fishermen who are not inferior to me. I will ask if they can help." "Oh, great, we just need one more." Guchen's eyes brightened, since those men were not inferior to Xuanhuan in ability. They must be masters. Ahu came over at this moment and said slowly, "Elder brother Chen, I have a suggestion for the last person. Why don't we ask elder brother Feng to come help us?" Zhao Feng. Once these 2 words were spoken, the whole hall became quiet. They still remembered that Zhao Feng had knocked Guang Xingshan down with one move. He was the most awesome fighter among everyone here. If Zhao Feng joined, the odds would be in their favor. Zhao Feng, Zhao Feng. Guchen bowed his head and paused, then hesitantly said, but he has retired. If we ask him to come out and help us, he will get into trouble again. It's a little. We brothers can see him through if he gets into trouble. Hu said with excitement. He had been hoping for Zhao Feng to lead them, so he really wanted to ask Zhao Feng to come out at this point. Even if this would cause elder brother Feng to be in trouble in the future, he would firmly follow him. Gu Chen still hesitated. He completely understood Zhao Feng's retirement. Now that he had retired, others would take their unlimited moves for granted if he reappeared. Besides, his peaceful life would be broken. However, if Zhao Feng joined in this battle, Gu Chen was almost sure to win, which tempted him. Elder brother Chen, don't hesitate. So what if we drag elder brother Feng into the mire? We will definitely rise abruptly after developing steadily for a period of time. If we get through this difficulty, we can give elder brother Feng whatever life he wants at that point. Won't it be better if we can import goods? Xuyong was a little impatient. He glanced at the clock and realized that it was already 6 o'clock, so they did not have time to hesitate. He looked at Hu and said, call elder brother Feng, ask him what he wants to do. Okay. Hu's lips curved in a barely perceptible smile. He took out his mobile phone in a hurry, then dialed Zhao Feng's number and put him on speakerphone, after which, the phone began to ring. There was dead silence in the room at this time. Everyone held their breath as a tense atmosphere covered the area. They did not know whether elder brother Feng would agree. Even Hu was a little nervous, but it wasn't long before the phone call connected. Hey, Hu, you got up early today. Zhao Feng's voice came from the mobile phone. Elder brother Feng. Hu said in somewhat trembling voice, Lao Biao took action last night. Everywhere except here was destroyed. Now, elder brother Chen and elder brother Yong are in the nightclub with us. Lao Biao and his associates were just here to give us a choice. A 10-people fight. Me, elder brother Chen, elder brother Yong, elder Meng. A 10-people fight? Zhao Feng's heavy voice was heard. How did you and elder Meng get involved? Don't you two understand your own level? Zhao Feng was obviously reprimanding them when he said the second sentence, as if to say that the two of them were boasting and had no idea of their limitations. We're unable to find a way out. We're short on hands and only managed to gather 9 people. Elder brother Feng, Hu could not continue, but Zhao Feng clearly knew what he meant. Zhao Feng became silent. At this moment, the hearts of nearly 100 people on the scene gradually began to beat faster. They all knew he would make a decision in the next moment. Finally, Zhao Feng's voices crackled over the telephone line after 5 seconds. I need to ask my boss, so please wait for me. The instant he finished speaking, Zhao Feng hung up the phone. He frowned and thought for a while, then put on his coat and hurried out from the main residence. It took him a few minutes to reach the restaurant. After entering, Zhao Feng whispered, Master, are you awake? Master, are you here? Hey, who is it? Meng ran down the stairs at this point. After catching sight of Zhao Feng, Meng stretched out her small hands and waved, then said, Why are you here so early? I got up early today, so I came here earlier. Meng got up early too, Zhao Feng answered with a smile. Meng got up just now, the sun was shining on my little bottom. Meng said while pouting, then she ran to the sofa to watch cartoons. At this moment, Zhang Han came down from the second floor. On seeing him, Zhao Feng quickly stepped forward to greet him and whispered. Master, there's something I want to ask you about. What's the matter? Zhang Han said casually. Forever Harmony Association is in chaos, and my former men have encountered difficulties. They need to win a battle but they are short one person. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Han interrupted, Do you want to join them? Hearing his words, Zhao Feng froze. He failed to figure out Zhang Han's intentions from his expression, so he eventually replied after thinking for a while, I'll do what you say. Zhang Han stared him up and down, then chuckled and casually said, Go if you want to. Don't tell me about such trivial matters in the future. As long as you aren't doing something evil, you can do whatever you want. Okay, thank you. boss. Zhao Feng's eyes brightened and he nodded repeatedly. Go. Zhao Feng turned to leave. When he was about to exit, Zhang Han spoke indifferently and said, "You're my disciple, so you shouldn't have inhibitions when you handle matters. Strike down your opponents and don't allow them to enter my sight." "I understand, Master." Zhao Feng picked himself up and nodded heavily, then got in his car to leave. On the other side, on the first floor of the Fengming nightclub, everyone's worry gradually caused the air in the room to feel heavy. It's been 20 minutes and he hasn't called back yet. Perhaps elder brother Feng won't come. Xuanhuan gave a wry smile. He had not expected their last hope to be shattered. Hu sighed and said, elder brother Feng has retired after all, so it's normal that he wouldn't come. It's already 6:30. Brother Chen, it's time for us to set out. Yes, it's time to go, Chen said in a low voice. He would have a chance to win if Zhao Feng joined. Thinking about fighting without Zhao Feng caused his heart to sink. He realized it was very likely that he would be killed this time. Just as they were about to set off, there was a great commotion outside. Elder brother Feng. He came. It's elder brother Feng. That's so great, elder brother Feng. The crowd took a few steps back to both sides, making a 3-meter wide path for him, as Zhao Feng walked into the room with a smile. Gradually, the crowd all shouted 3 words. Elder brother Feng. He had come. Chen breathed a sigh of relief, then looked at Zhao Feng and grinned. Hu, Xuanhuan, Elder Meng, and some others laughed heartily. Chapter 206, Under Great Pressure. Brother Feng, I know you won't give us up. Hu was deeply moved. He laughed and ran forward a few steps to give Zhao Feng a big hug. Brother Feng. Elder Meng also opened his arms with a smile. Come on. Zhao Feng directly raised his hand and refused his hug. He chuckled as he said, we will celebrate when we win. Well, that will be great. Elder Meng said while giving a chipper laugh. Here I am. Chen walked over and nodded to Zhao Feng. Well, let's go. Zhao Feng directly turned around and walked out. The group of people swarmed out of Fengming nightclub. They got in cars and headed for Mount Wannan. At 6:50 a.m., they arrived at the foot of the Mount Wannan. Mount Wannan was a relatively remote mountain behind New Moon Bay, and it was close to Mount New Moon, a few minutes away from there. As it was located inland, its scenery was overshadowed by Mount New Moon. However, people rarely came here, so it was a good place to fight. There was a large open space at the foot of the mountain. They parked their cars on the side of the road and walked toward the appointed place. Fuck, the group of idiots clamored for a fight, but they're late. Elder Meng grunted after he looked around, finding Lao Biao and his people had not arrived. Are they afraid to come because they hear that Brother Feng is coming? Hu said with a smile. His big brother Zhao Feng, who had beaten the legendary Xuan Xingchen with one move, had become invincible existence in their hearts. Wait and see. Chen shook his head and said, since he dared to pick a fight, Lao Biao definitely had an ace up his sleeve. At 6:55, the chirping of birds could be heard occasionally in the tranquil mountains. The warm sunlight fell on them, however, roars of car engines disturbed their peaceful minds. They're coming. Xuanhuan fixed his eyes on the end of the street. Nearly 100 people averted their eyes toward the comers at the same time. Led by 12 Mercedes-Benz cars, a Mercedes-Benz motorcade quickly drove over, with 16 Jinbai cars at the rear of the procession. What a crowd of people! Under their gaze, the motorcade stopped at the nearby roadside before Lao Biao and Meng Wu got out of the leading car. The two of them led a dozen senior members, and more than 100 minions brought up the rear. The group of people strode forward in an imposing manner. Chen, you're really punctual for our appointment, Lao Biao said with a faint smile. No, it's just that you're late. Chen responded in a flat tone. Haha, you came here so early, looks like you have someone to depend on. Lao Biao said as he looked at Zhao Feng, with a blast of coldness revealed in his eyes. However, he pretended to be surprised and cried, Who is this? If I remember correctly, isn't this Zhao Feng, who retired from the Jianghu 2 days ago? Ha ha ha, Zhao Feng turns out to be your protector. How powerful. I also admire you. Fuck, idiot. Since you're fucking retired, how dare you appear here? Zhao Feng, you really dig your own grave. Well, that's fine, we'll deal with you along with all the others. Meng Wu snickered. Hearing this, Ge Chen, Xuyong, and his brothers were startled, but they saw that Zhao Feng looked fearless. It seemed that he had a trump card. Zhao Feng fixed the duo with an indifferent stare as he said tonelessly, "Why need I explain to you what I will do? Two good-for-nothings. Are you qualified to go against me? If you have the courage, then fight with me in person." Hearing this, Lao Biao's face fell. He sneered and said, "Zhao Feng, you're really arrogant. That's true, we can't defeat you, but there are many people who can beat you." Pa. Finishing his words, Lao Biao clapped his hands 3 times. Instantly, a duo walked out of the crowd behind him. Ge Chen felt their faces seemed familiar when he saw them. Recalling for a while, he finally recognized them and his face changed slightly. Liu brothers? Are they? Xuyong raised his eyebrows. Surprisingly, he did not expect that Lao Biao could find the duo. Liu brothers were not very famous among the underground forces in Hong Kong. Common people rarely heard of their name. However, the group of people who joined the gangs earlier in Hong Kong, or rose to high rank at that time, had heard of their title, Underground Boxing Champion, Liu Brothers. 2 years ago, a foreign businessman on the South Island held the Underground Boxing Championship with a lot of prizes. The competition was not formal, like the upcoming 10-people fight, a bloody fight without any rules. A total of more than 30 people took part in the competition and most of them were very famous masters, but a pair of amazing brothers fought their way out and took the championship with their excellent skills of Muay Thai. Their strength was really remarkable. I didn't expect that you actually could find them. Ge Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "But, as Zhao Feng is here, 2 of them seem not enough. Are you Zhao Feng?" At that time, the short-haired man, one of Liu brothers, looked at Zhao Feng and asked in a low voice, "Yes, I heard that you had beaten Qiang Xingshan with 1 move. Is it true?" The short-haired man asked. "Don't worry, you will follow in his footsteps soon," Zhao Feng said flatly. "We will pay more attention to you later." The man, who had not been provoked by Zhao Feng's words, replied coldly and fell silent. He. Zhao Feng chuckled. His unconcerned look made people feel that he was extremely confident. How can it be just the 2 of them? Xuyong glared at Lao Biao and scoffed. "Don't tell me that you don't have fucking enough helpers. SHH. Lao Biao suddenly pricked up his ear before he said softly, "Don't worry, listen, they are coming." Buzz. Suddenly, roars of car engines came from a distance. Hearing the familiar sound, they all knew that it must be a supercar motorcade. All of them turned to have a look and saw an Aston Martin Limited Edition 177 leading the way at the end of the street. What? Ge Chen suddenly went pale. This supercar valued at 50 million was limited edition. Normally, the one who was able to drive this car and lead a supercar motorcade could only be Yi Han. Why is he here? Does he want to get involved? It turns out that he is Lao Biao's trump card. Today, I'm afraid it would be a tough battle. Ge Chen was deeply distressed. They drove fast. After a few seconds, the motorcade arrived. A tall man in sunglasses got out of the Aston Martin 177. He was Yi Han. He didn't come over, but he leaned against the front of the car, lit a cigarette, drew heavily on it, and puffed out a cloud of smoke. It looked like he was going to stand by and watch the fuss. His people all got out of more than a dozen supercars and leaned against the cars. Only 3 of them, who sat in the front passenger seats of the 3 cars next to Yi Han, slowly walked over, and their leader was a burly bald man, whose head was shiny, emitting the aura that chilled Ge Chen and his fellows. Liutan. Ge Chen was shocked. As the master of the Auction Martial Club, Liao Tun was proficient in martial arts. Ge Chen remembered that an ace fighter had once provoked Liao Tun and dueled with him. As a result, Liao Tun beat the fighter up with the overwhelming momentum and made him disabled. This was not the most important thing. After all, there were many people who had great battle achievements. It was worth noting that the disabled fighter had easily defeated Guang Xingshan with one single move, which meant he was very powerful. The duo standing behind Liao Tun was his noted disciples. The trio teamed up with Liu brothers, which seemed to tip the balance of the battle in Lao Biao's favor. Liao Tun stood in front of them. He raised his head slightly in a condescending manner and asked in an icy tone, "When will it start? Don't waste my time." "Don't worry, Mr. Li, the fight will just be entertainment for you," Lao Biao said impolitely. "Just a few of them." Liao Tun sneered, "Sorry, they're not qualified to entertain me." When Ge Chen and his fellows heard it, a trace of anger flashed through their faces. However, at this moment, no one spoke and even Zhao Feng kept silent. He felt pressured because he knew more about Liao Tun than others. When he was in the army, he and his instructor happened to watch how Liao Tun fought with others. At that time, his instructor said he himself might not match Liao Tun, which meant that Liao Tun mastered obvious strength a few years ago. However, now Zhao Feng still could not match his instructor. He did not know how powerful Liao Tun was now, but he was clear that Liao Tun would be stronger than 5 years ago. With this in mind, Zhao Feng could not help but feel depressed. However, he thought that there was still a glimmer of help to win, because the 10 people fight was not up to how powerful they are, but how fierce they would be. He was able to fight Liao Tun and hold him down. Ge Chen and Xuyong would deal with Liu brothers while Ahu and Elder Meng would battle with Liao Tun's disciples. However, the idea was beautiful, the reality was cruel. The next moment, at the end of the street came loud engine noises. Ge Chen's expression became stiff. He slowly turned his head and murmured in an anxious voice, "That comes more people?" Zhao Feng and others also averted their eyes toward the comers, because the coming opponents affected the battle result. However, when they saw the comers clearly, all of them, including Zhao Feng, turned pale. Xia Shanhao and Dong Tanping actually came here. What do they want to do? How shall we fight them? Hiss, they actually invited them here? Oh my god. Dong Tanping and Xia Shanhao did not come over, but 5 people strode toward the battlefield. Seeing them, Zhao Feng, Ge Chen, and other fellows also went pale. The 5 masters had been famous for a long period of time. Their arrival seemed to have announced the outcome of this battle. I, Ge Chen, will die today. Chapter 207, Master, I can't hold out. It made Ge Chen's hair stand on end. He knew that even if they knelt down and begged for mercy now, it would not help. Lao Biao invited Yi Han and the other powerful masters to come here, which had shown his determination to fight and win. Thinking of it, Ge Chen, Xuyong, Ahu, and the others all looked pale. Zhao Feng secretly gritted his teeth. After taking a deep breath, he looked at Lao Biao and said in a low voice, "Lao Biao, you actually hooked up with the other 3 groups. I didn't expect you to prepare a lot. Since then, we also need to prepare for it. The time of the fight is changed to 7:30. Changed the time? Ha ha ha. Who the fuck do you think you are? You can change it as you like." Meng Wu sneered. He was about to refuse, but Lao Biao shook his head with a smile and said, "Okay, it's just half an hour. We can wait, but I'll only give you half an hour to call all the helpers you can find. Today, I'll deal with them all." Lao Biao said in an aggressive tone and took a posture a powerful boss had. It looked like he was even intoxicated with his performance, which made the dissatisfied Liao Tun twitch the corner of his mouth and give up the idea of urging them to be quick. After all, he worked for him and had to give face to him. Okay. Zhao Feng nodded slightly, took out his mobile phone, and turned to walk away. Faced with the 10 opponents, he felt pressured as if the mount tile landed on the top of his head so that he could not bear it. At this time, he had to ask his master to help him. Seeing this, Ahu, who was originally desperate, suddenly ignited a glimmer of help in his heart and asked anxiously, Brother Feng, Brother Feng, Brother Feng, do you really have other helpers? Of course. Zhao Feng, you won't look for the police, right? Gu Chen said hesitantly. Right, Zhao Feng said as a mysterious smile lifted the corners of his mouth. Who is that? Can he resist their attacks? Xuyong asked anxiously. He. Zhao Feng chuckled and slowly said some words that shocked his fellows. Even if the 10 of them worked together, they could not match him, so resisting their attacks will be a piece of cake for him. Ah really? Gu Chen gasped, looking surprised and delighted, but at the same time, he doubted whether a person who could beat the 10 masters really existed in this world. You'll know it in a while. Well, I need to go there and make a call. Zhao Feng waved his hand, signaling to his fellows not to follow him. Then he stepped aside and dialed Zhang Han's number. Hearing the beep on the phone, Zhao Feng felt a growing sense of unease. Before he left, his master told him to be fearless and beat them up. However, now, he could not hold out. Alas, it's all about my strength. Why am I so weak? Zhao Feng sighed inwardly while giving a wry smile. Soon, the phone was connected, and Zhao Feng whispered, Master, what's the matter? I can't hold out. The people they found are more powerful than me. I've delayed it for a while and the fight will start at 7:30. Master, help. Oh, wait a minute, I'm cooking. Finishing those words, Zhang Han directly hung up. Zhao Feng was stunned. Master, you hung up so quickly and haven't asked where we are. What shall I do? Zhao Feng shook his head with a wry smile, stuffing his mobile phone into his pocket. When he turned around, he put on a calm look, then he slowly walked back. How about it? How about it? Have you found someone? Gu Chen immediately asked. Well, wait a minute. Don't worry, Zhao Feng said in a very confident tone, which rekindled helps among them. At this point, Zhang Han was cooking in the restaurant. The egg fried rice and noodle soup were finished. Now he was making shredded potatoes and sliced tomatoes with sugar. When the 2 dishes were prepared and placed on the round table, Zhang Han looked at the time. It was 7:05. It seemed that they still had time, so Zhang Han did not urge Meng Meng to be quick and let her have breakfast at her normal speed. After 10 minutes, Meng Meng pouted and said, I'm full. Meng Meng likes persimmons. They are delicious. Daddy wants to take you for a ride. How about it? Zhang Han asked with a smile as he stroked her daughter's head. Meng Meng rejoiced at the news. She waved her little arms as she said, okay, go for a ride. Hence, Zhang Han directly picked her up. At this time, the restaurant was full of guests and there were more than 20 people waiting in line at the door. Zhang Han glanced at Liang Mengkai and the others and said, I have to go out. Who is available to help me look after my restaurant for a while? I'm available. Liang Mengkai nodded. I'm also available, boss. You can rest assured to go out and we'll look after the restaurant. Sun Donging added. Since his father recovered from his illness, Sun Donging had kept his hair spiky, but it was dyed khaki, less low-key than the exaggerated colors he had. Obviously, this boy still liked to play about, but he could not bring his girl to pretend to be charming because his parents had more leisure time recently and would go out for dinner with him every time he came here. Hearing this, Zhang Han nodded and walked out with Meng Meng in his arms. He took Meng Meng out for he did not intend to deal with those people personally. In fact, he was not interested in it, either. Hence, he got into the panda car and drove directly to Mount New Moon. Arriving at the foot of the mountain, Zhang Han asked Meng Meng to stay in the car and watch a mobile video for a while. Then he strode into the forest and ran his spiritual force to summon Dai. After a minute, Dai rushed over with little hi. Dai, change your form, I'll take you out to have some fun, Zhang Han said with a smile. Oh, hum. Hearing this, Dai was over the moon. It took the illusory body copper coin which hung around its neck and stared at it for a while before it changed into a hunk, who was twice as strong as Johnson. Oh, by the way, don't let Meng Meng see you when you're transforming. Zhang Han reminded. He would definitely let his little princess start her cultivation journey. However, having considered it for a period of time, he thought that Meng Meng was still in the initial stage of cognition, so he was not sure whether she could know something about cultivation now and felt that he'd better look at the situation before making any plan. Oh. Dai scratched his head and responded to show it had got it. He did not know the reason, however, whatever it was, obedience was always the right thing because it knew that as long as it obeyed his master's orders, it could eat the livestock on the mountain at will. Then Zhang Han walked toward the outside of the forest with Dai. Little Hai followed them. When they arrived at the edge of the jungle, Little Hai sat on the ground, looking disappointed. Since Dai came, I've been out of favor. Does the master not like me? Seeing this, Zhang Han smiled and waved at him. You can come, too. Ow. Little Hai was cheerful and skipped over. Dai and Little Hai got into the back seat. Seeing the duo, Meng Meng asked with some doubts, Papa, there. Who is the big, tall brother? He is also called Dai. Ah? Meng Meng was stunned when hearing this. She looked curiously at the big brother, raised her little hand, and waved at him, saying in a childish voice, Big brother, hello, you, why are you also called Dai? I have a good friend, who is also called Dai. It's a super big gorilla. Hearing this, Dai pouted its lips and cried, oh, letting out two cries. It thought of what his master had said and its heart missed a beat. Damn, I almost revealed my identity. Its eyes thought for a while and came up with an idea. It grinned and cried, oh, hiccup, ow. Dai lowered its voice and let out two cries. As it thought it should stop crying, it tilted its head, pretending to ignore her, while fixing its eyes on Meng Meng. Hey, what are you talking about? Seeing that the man ignored her, Meng Meng snorted softly and said discontentedly, you ignore me, I can ignore you, Humphrey. Finishing her words, Meng Meng turned her head away and pouted her lip, ignoring him. Dai scratched its head in a daze. Little Hai stuck out its tongue and planned to do nothing but watch them. Actually, it inwardly praised Dai's performance. After driving for a few minutes, Zhang Han was slightly stunned and thought that he hadn't asked Zhao Feng's location yet. He embarrassedly took out his mobile phone and called Zhao Feng to ask about it. Knowing that he was not far away from his destination, Zhang Han headed for it. At the same time, at the foot of Mount Xuanhuan, a few minutes had passed since Zhao Feng answered the phone. Lao Biao looked at his watch and said with a sneer, there are still 3 minutes. Can your helpers come? I must tell you that whether they come or not, the fight will start at 7:30 on time. I've given you an opportunity and you haven't cherished it, so you can't blame it on me. Hee, don't be anxious. Zhao Feng said with a faint smile, the one who is the last to come is the real heavyweight. Really? Then I will wait for the last 3 minutes. Lao Biao narrowed his eyes as he clapped his hands, shouting, come on, let's make room for them first. Then Lao Biao and his people all took a few steps back and let Liutan, Liu brothers, and the other 7 masters stand in the front. At this point, Liutan began warming up and the sounds of bones rattling could be heard. He looked at Zhao Feng and said with disdain, you guys don't need to wait for someone. No matter who will come, he will die. If I disable one, I can get 5 million yuan, so you can expect what will happen to you. We want 4, one of Liu brothers said coldly. I want 5. Liutan responded with an arrogant look. 4 and 5? Then there is only 1 left for us. How can we share? Another powerful figure spoke with a frown. You will fight 2 of them and you will get 3, that's enough. We all know each other and often get together. Don't go overboard. 10 of them, 1 for each of us. They talked as if they had treated Zhao Feng and his fellows as their prey in the bag. People standing behind Zhao Feng were not only frightened but also furious because they suffered naked contempt. Don't brag, my helper will defeat all of you with 1 hand. Zhao Feng glanced at the 10 people in front of him and smiled faintly. What did you say? Liutan glared at him and seemed to launch an attack. The time is up. let's get started. Lao Biao stuck out his tongue and licked his lower lip. He grinned and said, Zhao Feng, I thought you could really find someone, but just empty words. Hey, enjoy yourself for the rest of the time. Who said I didn't come? I'm already here. Zhao Feng squinted and looked at the end of the street. At this moment, the other people all turned to look in that direction. When they saw a cute panda car slowly drawing near, Yi Han, Dong Tanping, and Xia Shanhao turned pale. Chapter 208, Why? It seemed that Zhao Feng had some relationship with the restaurant owner. He actually came. Yi Han and the others narrowed their eyes. However, they were not afraid because they had guessed the restaurant owner might come, so they had made sufficient preparations for this fight. The three forces had not directly stepped in. It could be said that they were spectators. They only found some experts by using their connections to help Lao Biao finish this fight. Then all the forces in Southern District would be like a giant group, led by Lao Biao, and the three forces of them would get dividends according to their own shares. Although the restaurant owner may be involved, they thought that the benefits they would gain were great enough to make them ignore him. Of course, they had seen the video of the restaurant owner fighting in Chenxing nightclub, so they looked for the 10 masters, who had been renowned for a long period of time. In their view, with the 10 masters here, even if 2 more helpers like Zhang Han came, it would not help, not to mention Zhang Han alone. They only worried that the foreign masters Zhao Feng invited last time would come, because the strong men like Johnson was so powerful and invulnerable that swords and spears could not penetrate his body. However, they did not know the restaurant owner who had been despised by them was the real powerful figure, and that even the security bureau felt a headache because they thought it hard to deal with him. If they knew, they wouldn't even dare to get involved. Under everyone's gaze, the shabby and worthless car slowly drove in. Including Liaoten and Lenny Wu brothers, all of them looked in that direction. When it reached the edge of the battlefield, the car stopped and the rear door was opened. They only saw a thick thigh being stuck out. Then a man with the amazing height of more than 2 meters got out of the car. It was Dai. Hiss. Yi Han and the rest gasped. What should have come finally came. Even Lenny Wu brothers' expressions were stiff. Looking at the muscles that the strong man wanted to show, they felt that this man's strength must be incredible. Shit, this killing god has actually come. Those who had seen the fight with their own eyes outside Tangzhan's luxurious villa turned pale, and even many of them could not help shrink back. An uproar rose in the crowd. Damn, we will surely lose the fight because of him. Who can beat him? My god, he is a powerful man, who has an invulnerable body. Liaoten had good hearing and heard a man not far from him say that the strong man had an invulnerable body, which upset him. An invulnerable body? What the fuck? What are you talking about? Hence, he furrowed his eyes and said in a cold voice, since your helpers are here, then hurry to get started. Don't waste my time. He is a silly hunk with some muscles. Zhao Feng's mouth quivered slightly as he heard it. Good boy, you're really good at offending us. Let's look at how you will be swung and hit in a while. Oh? Dai stared at him and raised its nose slightly, looking a bit fierce, but it had not moved. Faced with so many people, it didn't know how to react, beating all of them up or something else, so it was waiting for Zhang Han's command. Under everyone's gaze, the window of the little panda car was slowly rolled down. Zhang Han stuck his head out slightly. It seemed that he did not intend to get out of the car. He looked at Zhao Feng as he said flatly, send him back when the fight is over. Yes. Zhao Feng responded loudly. Send it back? Bullshit. Meng Wu cocked his head and looked at Zhang Han, scoffing. Aren't you a little boss of that restaurant? You haven't noticed where you are. Are you qualified to speak? What did you say? Zhao Feng's eyes became cold and his muscles tightened. It looked like he was about to make a move. Zhao Feng, don't put on airs here, you will be beaten up and disabled. Meng Wu had not finished his words, but a black shadow flashed out of the back seat of the panda car like lightning. Even all of them had not realized what it was and only vaguely saw a figure like a dog run more than 10 meters within 2 breaths of time. It was Little Hai. When it came in the front of Meng Wu, it leapt and opened its mouth, showing sharp fangs to bit Meng Wu's face. At this moment, time seemed to be still. Although Liutan and others could see Little Hai's movements clearly, they could not resist its attack at the same horrible speed. On one side, Yi Han, Xia Shanhao, Dong Tanping, and their minions were shocked, as they thought of the fucking man's battle achievement on that day. Their hearts missed a beat and all of them looked terrified. This was a vicious dog as fierce as a beast. However, Meng Wu only felt a dark shadow floating over from the side. He turned his head with his mouth agape. What he saw was sharp fangs, and his eyes gradually rounded. Whoosh! Little Hai's teeth directly pierced Meng Wu's chin. The latter was knocked to the ground. Ah! Meng Wu immediately screamed and twisted, but no matter how he resisted, it was of no help. After 2 seconds, Lao Biao, who stood at Meng Wu's side, came to his senses. He hurried to take 4 or 5 steps back and cried in terror, "Kill this dog for me." Hearing this, a dozen daring men behind him rushed up. "Ow!" Dai roared and stepped forward to meet them. A dozen attackers had no idea how powerful Dai was. They drew out daggers one after another and tried to fight against it. However, they were directly beaten or kicked away by Dai. The strength. Liu brothers' faces fell slightly. At that time, Lao Biao's minions moved in while Zhao Feng and his people also walked forward. Seeing that a fierce fight was about to take place, Zhang Han spoke in a flat tone. "Little Hai, come back." Hearing it, Little Hai's loosened its mouth, glancing at the crowd. It looked fiercer than a wolf. People all felt a chill of fear when they met its gaze. What a terrible look! However, Little Hai ignored them. He walked slowly back step by step, jumped into the back seat of the car, and even closed the door with its claw. Seeing this, the group of people were a little shocked involuntarily. What the hell was this? Zhang Han did not say anything further, rolled up the window and leisurely drove the car away. At this moment, Meng Wu's bloody chin made him unable to speak. Worse still, his cheeks had turned into a bloody pile of flesh. Although it would not threaten his life, his appearance was terrible. His injuries were even severer than serious burns. Lao Biao got an awful fright and felt his heart was pounding. At the same time, anger was gradually rising in his heart. He waved his hand and asked his men to take Meng Wu to the hospital. Then he looked at Zhao Feng and wanted to have a fight, but before he could say anything, oh, after Zhang Han left, Dai widened its eyes and looked around. It seemed that it was looking for the target to attack. Go, go, go. Be quick. Yi Han was so frightened that he began to quiver as he met its gaze. He shouted, quickly got into the car and drove 200 meters away. Xia Shanhao and Dong Tanping looked at each other. They also got into the car, drove 200 meters, stopped the car, and got out of it, dumbfounded. Everything was done in an instant. The three people's reaction shocked Lao Biao and his minions. From the expressions they could vaguely see, they found that the three people seemed very afraid of the strong man in front of them. It was just. Why were they scared? The next moment, they knew what was going on. As Liutan, who had become impatient because of waiting, saw Dai looking for someone to have a fight, his face darkened and he shouted coldly, courting death. When he finished his words, he ran straight to Dai, quickening his steps. He moved his right fist behind his back, in order to gather force and give a heavy punch. He was very experienced in dealing with such a strong man. He thought as long as his fist was hard enough, he could beat anyone. He often said, no matter how strong my opponent is, I treat him as a breeze blowing the hills. No matter how violent he is, I'll treat him as the bright moon shining the great river. Fighting is my answer. Liutan moved, and his two disciples followed him closely. The duo tried to directly defeat the hunk with one move before their masters launched an attack. Oh? Dai raised his nose and faced Liutan with its big nostrils. It had not intended to parry their attack, and its muscles of the upper part tightened up. Liaotan's eyes became cold when he saw it. Go to hell! He gave a sudden roar and used 90% of his strength, which turned into one punch. He knew that even if there was a cow opposite him, he could throw it to the ground. This aggressive punch dashed toward Dai's chest. At that time, everyone's eyes gradually rounded. They all held their breath and looked forward to the picture of the hunk falling down. Just crack. The crisp sound of bone fracture went off, not from the hunk's chest but Liaotan's powerful arm. What? The others were astonished. Liaotan was already stunned before he could feel the pain in his arm. He slowly raised his head. What he saw was Dai's disdainful look. Ow! Dai roared and threw a punch with his right fist, which became bigger and bigger in Liaotan's eyes. Bang! One punch hit Liaotan's chest, directly sending him 5 meters into the air and flying nearly 20 meters away. Floating in the air, he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and fell in the back of the crowd, unconscious. Hiccup. 2 of his disciples quickly made a sudden stop, but as they ran too fast, it was too late for them to stop now. They halted until they were not far from Dai. At this point, the duo wanted to cry and was about to shiver in terror when Dai's leg was lifted. Bang! Bang! It gave them 2 kicks, which sent the duo flying 10 meters away as if a strong man were kicking a football. At this moment, the battlefield was as silent as the grave. Aside from the slight sound of the wind blowing leaves, there were no other sounds. Everyone widened their eyes and couldn't believe what was happening. This. How did this happen? Lao Biao was petrified at this time. Oh, my God, he is Liaotan, not a nobody. How could he be knocked cold by a blow? Hiss. It turned out that Dong Tanping and the other 2 did have reason to escape. Chapter 209, Run. Get in the car. Oh, my God. Even Dong Tanping, Xia Shanhao and Yi Han are all afraid of this man in front of them. All 3 of them dare not provoke him and dare not continue to watch the fight here. That means, is this man in front of us already terrifying to the unimaginable point? How can we fight this? The man, who stood there, has won the 10 people fight. Lao Biao was disheartened. He looked at Liu brothers and the others. Now 3 of them had fallen on the ground, but he still had 7 masters. Perhaps there was a glimmer of help to win. Lao Biao didn't expect that Liu brothers and the other 5 looked at each other and said 2 words in a serious tone. Run. Whoosh. Liu brothers and the rest 5, who were famous masters, immediately turned and ran without hesitation, like competing in a 100-meter dash. They ran about 50 meters within a few breaths of time. Looking at their backs, Lao Biao was stunned. Why did they run away so directly? What about their dignity as masters? Did they abandon it? But he didn't know that Liu brothers and the other 5 masters thought even if they worked together to attack the hunk, they would be beaten in a second. The man is too terrifying. Which level is he now? Why is he so powerful? The hearts of Liu brothers and the other 5 sank. They were unable to fight against him. As they shook in terror, they also felt a little lucky. It was a good thing that Liaotan, the arrogant guy, went to test the water. Otherwise, the consequence was unbearable if they had a 10-people fight. Seeing that his helpers escaped, Lao Biao was not only surprised but also angry. Damn it. Lao Biao gnashed his teeth and cursed them out. A flicker of ferociousness flashed through his face and he roared. Brothers, take your weapons and kill him for me. As soon as Lao Biao spoke, more than 100 people behind him moved. Many hands provided great strength and courage. They took out their weapons and rushed towards Dai. What the fuck? Guchen raised his eyebrows, looking fierce. He lifted his hand up as he cried. Everybody, come and... Zhao Feng reached out and covered his mouth before his aggressive words were finished. Seeing that his brothers were ready to move, Zhao Feng raised his arms and said, everyone, don't move, step back. Although his brothers were puzzled, they took several steps back. At this time, Zhao Feng removed his hand which covered Guchen's mouth. What are you doing? Chen frowned and asked. Our opponents are going to touch our helper. At the critical moment, why did Zhao Feng ask us not to move? Even if he is powerful, the hunk can't beat more than 100 people, can he? Moreover, those people have weapons in their hands. If they attack the vital part of his body, he will die, won't he? Hearing this, Zhao Feng shook his head with a wry smile and looked at Dai, sighing. Those people are not enough for him to fight alone. If his opponent is not enough, he will not be happy. If that happens, he will beat me. Ah, beat you? There. Problem is whether he can block them. If something unexpected happens, Xuanhuan said hesitantly. Just watch. Zhao Feng did not want to explain because they would immediately know the reason anyway. Hence, Chen, Xuanhuan, Afu and others all fixed their eyes on the hunk. Their hearts were still in their mouths and they were very nervous when they saw the group of people rushing to Dai. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Letting out two cries, Dai smashed his big fists on his chest several times before it dashed into the crowd. It waved its arm and knocked down a few of attacker. With one kick, it sent a person flying which caused more than 10 attackers to fall when he collided with them. After more than 10 seconds, over 40 people lay on the ground. Seeing what happened, Lao Biao and his minions all widened their eyes in terror. Was this still a human? Be quick. Lao Biao was about to ask his minions to run but found that many of his minions had already run several meters when he said the first word. Run. The next moment, Lao Biao saw Dai running over and was so scared that he began to shiver. He wanted to run, but he felt his leg went limp. He staggered and fell to the ground. When he got up and wanted to run, he found that his body was tossed into the air. He felt dizzy, followed by a sharp pain. Then he passed out happily. At this point, Dai was running forward, which terrified many of Lao Biao's minions. They used all their strength for fear that they would be caught because of running slowly. They quickly dashed toward their cars, got in and hurriedly drove away. It was in a mess. It was unknown how many cars had been scratched when they drove away in a panic. But even if the cars were broken because of the collision, they would not care, for it was important to save lives. But there were also some people who had bad luck. Two cars crashed head-on with each other, which caused their engines to misfire. What the fuck? The people in the two cars were disheartened. The hunk had appeared at the side of their cars. They saw him stretch out his arms violently, grabbed the car chassis, lifted it over his head, and threw, ding, bang, throwing the two cars away. Dai found no one was standing within a radius of tens of meters. Oh, I haven't enjoyed myself. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Dai curled its lips and let out a few cries, then it smashed its fist on its chest to vent his depression. Bang, bang, bang. Bang! A clear and audible thud could be heard. The scene shocked the other people whose eyes almost bulged out. This, Brother Feng, you. He. Where did you find this powerful figure? Xuanhuan said in a trembling voice. It was amazing. He never thought that a person could knock down hundreds of people. Oh, my God. Chen, who had always been relatively calm, was stunned at this moment. He looked at Dai and said in a shaking voice, he is as powerful as a gang. It's really awesome. Even with Tang Zhan in our gang, our Forever Harmony Association would not be his match. Hiss. As he said, an idea suddenly crossed his mind. He gasped and looked at Zhao Feng, saying, I heard that last time you tried to take revenge on Tang Zhan, it wouldn't be right. Zhao Feng's chin was slightly raised and he said flatly, he killed Tang Zhan with one blow. Hiss. Hearing this, everyone gasped. Then, he was invited here, or? Chen asked. He follows my boss. Can it be said that he is one of his minions or disciples and also? Zhao Feng did not say the last sentence because he couldn't. Dai now had the appearance of a human, so he could not call Dai his boss's pet. Besides, Zhao Feng was embarrassed. He was a decent gangster, brother crazy. Since he came to Mount New Moon, he had become the weakest when compared with a dog and a gorilla. Alas, things were unpredictable. Your boss? Guchen closed his eyes and took a deep breath, mumbling, "It's really a concealed talent. I wonder whether your boss is more powerful than the brave man in front of us. My boss. He can handle it with only one hand." Zhao Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. He now had a rough understanding of how powerful a Qi strength master was. His master was able to use Qi to drive flowers and leaves to attack people. Controlling strength by Qi, his master was definitely stronger than Dai. Ah? Guchen was completely dumbfounded and nearly bit his tongue. He thought that the hunk in front of him was already a powerful figure, but he didn't expect that the humble restaurant owner was able to beat him with one hand. Does the powerful figure really exist in the world? Guchen murmured in a daze. Of course, Zhao Feng answered flatly. It's really that a big shot usually hides in the city. Xuyong shook his head and sighed with emotion. On the other side, more than 200 meters away from here, Yi Han gawked at Dai, which had punched his chest. He was even oblivious to the fact that his sunglasses fell to the ground. There he is again. He's definitely one of the minions of the owner of the restaurant. Alas, we can't set foot in the southern district. Forget it. I'd better not get involved in the affairs of the southern district. I'll go. Yi Han shook his head and sighed slightly. He got in his Aston Martin and took the lead in leaving. Xuanhuan and Dong Tanping got into trouble. Dong Tanping, fuck you. Do you really want to drag me down? You want me to help you fight against such a powerful figure? Do you really want me to die? The heavyweight master Dong Tanping invited kicked the back door of his car and pointed at him, cursing angrily, and the other two also glared at him. It seemed that they would attack Dong Tanping if he did not give them an explanation. No, I really don't. Dong Tanping immediately shook his head and said bitterly, how could I have known in advance that there was a god of slaughter? If I had known in advance, I would never have come here. Calm down first. I won't let you come and gain nothing. I'll pay each of you 5 million yuan, so don't be mad at me. I really don't know. Hearing. The trio shot a fierce glance at Dong Tanping and did not say anything further. After all, no one would refuse money. Dong Tanping shook his head again and felt bitter in his heart. This time he really suffered a lot for this fight, losing his money and his people. However, Xia Shanhao's condition was not much better than his. The two masters he found grabbed his neckband and was about to beat him. Finally, Xia Shanhao saved himself by promising a reward of 5 million yuan per person. Lenny Wu brothers, who were standing by, were somewhat upset. They glanced at Lao Biao who was lying not far away and fainted. Then they thought of Meng Wu, who had been carried away. Both of them collapsed. Who shall we ask for money? However, after looking at the hunk, they felt that although they lost their money, it was good that they had not been knocked out. Looking at the arrogant Liutan, they guessed that he would be paralyzed from the waist down. Oh, Dai hit its chest for a while and vented its bad feelings. Its eyes lit up when it saw that a group of people was standing more than 200 meters away. It stepped forward and ran toward them in an aggressive manner. Run, get in the car. Go. Dai moved, which startled them, including Lenny Wu brothers. They all got into their cars and slipped away like the wind. Chapter 210, Guchen's Decision. Ooh. Dai let out a disdainful cry. He stretched its arm and gave them the thumbs down, showing its contempt. The group of people is more cowardly than the previous ones, who at least had the guts to take out their weapon and fight with me. If Xia Shanhao were able to read Dai's mind, they would not know whether to laugh or cry. Guts, what was it? Could they eat it? Seeing so many people lying on the ground, they would be fucking stupid if they did not run. Ha ha ha. Seeing them running fast, Dai thought it was funny and burst into laughter. Wow! We won! Ha ha ha! Guchen and his fellows laughed, cheered, or hugged each other in twos or threes. In a word, they all gave vent to the joy of victory at this moment. Brothers, let's go back and celebrate. Xuyong raised his arm and cried. Okay. Many people roared with laughter. Chen patted Zhao Feng's arm and said with a smile, Zhao Feng, let's have a good drink later. Sorry, I can't. Zhao Feng shook his head. He looked at Dai and pouted his lip, saying, I have to send him back first. Invite the gallant man to have a drink with us. Chen suggested with some doubts. Zhao Feng still shook his head and said, my boss asked me to send him back, so he can't go, either. At the same time, he thought, let Dai drink, come on, if it's drunk, it will be uncontrollable. He had seen the drunken gorilla go crazy, which was terrifying. Brother Feng, you can send him back and then come to our party, is that okay? Who spoke? I have no time during the day. What about tonight? Xuanhuan said, if you're not available, then I can change the time to tonight. We stayed up all night and can have a rest during the day. The celebration party is meaningless without you, our big hero. HRM. Zhao Feng felt that it was hard to turn down their warm-hearted invitation. Pondering for a while, he said, if everything is fine, I will be free after 9 o'clock. Then the party will start at 10 o'clock. Chen said without hesitation. He raised his hand, waved, and shouted, we'll go back to sleep now. 10 o'clock tonight, come to celebrate today's victory. Okay. No matter what the big brother said, his minions only needed to say yes. Then I'm going back. Zhao Feng nodded and walked toward Dai, who waved his hand and cried, Brother Feng, I will wait for you all night. Brother Feng, come back to be our big brother and we all want to follow you. Right, Brother Feng, if you can't join the gang, then start a company and we can work for you. Come back. Elder Meng raised his hand and cried. Although he has good relations with Chen and Xuanhuan, Zhao Feng was the only big brother in his heart. Aside from Elder Meng, the other fellows shared the same thought with Hu. From this point, it could tell that Zhao Feng had great character. Hearing this, Zhao Feng stopped. A trace of complication flashed through his eyes, but he continued to move forward without looking back. However, when Zhao Feng stood in front of Dai did not give face to him and pushed him away, which caused the latter to stagger back a step. Zhao Feng stared at Dai with a confused look and asked in a guiltless tone, what's the matter? Ooh, ow, ooh. Dai made a few gestures. After thinking for a while, Zhao Feng finally understood what it meant. It turned out that Dai had not enjoyed itself in this fight and blamed him for it. Those people you found are too unreliable. I only hit them twice and they ran. What's this? They're much weaker than these people I fought last time. At least, they knew their limits and still fought against me for 2 minutes. Well, let's go first. Zhao Feng gave a wry smile and thought, they made a good choice. If I met such a powerful figure, I would run like them, otherwise, I would be considered stupid. However, now, he got to know how to deal with Dai, hence he said with a smile, Dai, you've made a great contribution, Master will reward you. As for the fowl on the mountain, you can eat whatever you like today. Zhao Feng said while observing Dai's expressions. He did not expect that the hunk actually snorted scornfully. We eat it every day, do we need you to remind us? Dai gave Zhao Feng another push and made him stumble. Upon seeing this, Chen and the other fellows were shocked. How? Can he treat our brother Feng like bullying children? Zhao Feng also looked a little embarrassed and quickened his pace. He walked to his car, opened the rear door and then hurried to the driver's seat. Ooh. Dai got into the car and let out 2 cries. It sounded that it was satisfied with the car. It's comfortable to sit in this car. Our host's broken car is terrible. I have to lower my head in his car. I don't like it. Seeing Zhao Feng driving away, Chen and his fellows also got in cars and left. Chen was sitting in a car with Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan looked somewhat excited, while Chen frowned slightly. Brother Chen, Lao Biao and Meng Wu are badly injured. They might stay in hospital for a period of time. This fight has scared the hell out of them, but our people are uninjured. So how about fighting back to occupy the entire southern district now? We can't miss this opportunity. Xuanhuan said excitedly. Although Lao Biao and Meng Wu fell, they had some trusted followers. Many hands provided great strength. With you and me, we have to make a good plan before taking action, Guchen said slowly. Why did you say only two of us? Don't we have Ahu and the other brothers? Xuyong was stunned. It will be easier for us to achieve our goal with their help, but you've already heard what Ahu and his fellows said. They're loyal to Zhao Feng. Now Zhao Feng's attitude is not clear and it's hard to persuade him to agree to our plan. Guchen shook his head. He was clear that if Zhao Feng came back, Ahu and his fellows would follow him. After all, they were originally Zhao Feng's people. However, he felt that Zhao Feng would not return to their underground forces since he had said he wanted to retire, which was also the reason why Guchen hesitated, debating whether to talk to Ahu and the others about their plan. If Ahu and the rest really persuaded Brother Feng to change his mind, what shall we do? Xuyong asked hesitantly. What do you mean? Guchen replied with a confused look. Who will be the big brother? Ha ha. Guchen laughed, shook his head and said, is there any need to think about it? If he really comes back, he will be the big brother. If so, we can occupy the southern district and hold it firmly. And I'll be much more powerful than being Tang Zan's minions, even if I am not the big brother. Phew. Xuyong breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, you're right, I was worried that you would compete for it with Brother Feng. Compete? Guchen did not know whether to laugh and cry and responded, even if I want to compete for it, what qualifications do I have to do that, with the help of the hunk, who dare challenge him? Besides, even if he doesn't have this helper, I won't compete with him because he had great character and won't treat anyone unfairly. I think so. Xuyong nodded his agreement, then he paused and said with a wry smile, we're getting off the track, Brother Feng will hardly come back. Well, I'll ask Ahu what they think later. Guchen said with a chuckle. Back to the Fengming nightclub, everyone went to rest in their room. Guchen walked into his room and asked someone to call Ahu, Elder Meng, and the other 5 members over here. When they came into his room, Ahu asked, what's the matter, Brother Chen? Ahu, I want to ask you something. Guchen said frankly, would you like to fight for control of the southern district with me? The army is defeated, like a mountain collapsing. Now that Lao Biao was defeated, his gang lost its pillar, we can gain control of southern district and then you will be a well-known figure. The eyes of Ahu and the rest lit up as they heard it. Being a well-known figure and enjoying great wealth was their dream. Noticing the subtle emotion on their faces, Guchen decided to incite them to help him, so he said in a deep voice, you're the same with Xuyong, not my minions but my brothers. I won't interfere in your management or anything like. We'll stay the same as Zhao Feng and I did before. You can rest assured for this point, my character. Brother Chen, I know. Ahu nodded directly and said, I trust you. You saved me and I've been grateful to you. But, I want to know Brother Feng's decision tonight. Me too. Ask Brother Feng for advice tonight. So do we. The 7 people shared the same thoughts. Upon seeing this, Ahu did not want to embarrass Guchen. Hence he scratched his head and said, sorry, Brother Chen, Brother Feng is not here and we have no backbone and we can't make up our minds. Well, that's fine, I understand. Then we can talk together after he comes tonight. Guchen waved his hand with a smile, then the smile on his face dissipated and turned into a serious look as he said, I want to tell you that if Zhao Feng can join us again, the leader. Guchen lengthened his voice. When he saw Ahu's surprised look, Guchen said word for word. Is definitely him. Hiss. Brother Chen, are you serious? Ahu's eyes lit up. Zhao Feng became the leader and they were his trusted followers. They had dreamed of it. There is absolutely no empty talk. Guchen nodded with a solemn look. Brother Chen, you're good. We know how to do it. Tonight, we'll have a good talk with Brother Feng. Elder Meng laughed out. Ha ha ha. Guchen waved his hands with a smile and said, well, you can go to have rest. We'll have a good celebration tonight. Okay, Brother Chen. Ahu nodded and led the other brother out of his room. On the other side, Zhao Feng sent Dai back to New Moon Bay. When he arrived at the restaurant, Zhao Feng caught the last chance for breakfast. Zhao Feng sighed with emotion while having a delicious breakfast. I not only have a powerful helper but also an amazing cook master. Now I'm the disciple of the owner of the restaurant. From now on, I'll taste more and more food, just. With this in mind, Zhao Feng felt a bit aggrieved. After the meal, Zhao Feng cleaned up the restaurant and stealthily appeared in front of Zhang Han, whispering, "Master, I'm so weak, I haven't fixed it and had to trouble you." Zhang Han directly nodded. "That, Master, when shall I start practicing? Dai gave me a push today and made me stumble," Zhao Feng said awkwardly.